Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I'm going to show you what I'm working on in the shop today. I apologize, my voice is a little hoarse, but that doesn't stop me from working on reels. And today I'm going to work on the Daiwa Black Gold 30, the BG30. Interestingly enough, it's a beautiful reel. It's been in the Daiwa family for quite some time. It's gone through a few iterations, and this one is probably 5 or 6 or 7 years old now. It's not the current edition, but it's one that I'm sure a lot of you own out there, and one that requires maintenance just like every fishing reel that's on the market. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with this one. I'll show you the basic service techniques. I'll show you how to keep this thing clean, how to lubricate it so that it's good for the season, and how to go ahead and make sure that you're ready to land those big fish without any problems. So the BG30, if you have it, you know it's probably not a 30 size reel. It seems more like a 60 size reel from traditional sizing, but it's in the lower end. They make a couple of bigger ones out there, but it's definitely a heavy duty reel for the bigger fish. So I start by removing the handle and the gear plate. That's where all the action's happening. You'll notice a couple of things. I wear a latex glove to keep the contaminants off my hand. I also use a parts tray to store my parts so that I know where to find them when I go to reassemble the reel. So first thing off is the handle. Now we're going to take the side plate off. That has 3 Phillips head screws. I'm constantly asked, you know, what about using a battery powered screwdriver? And I don't have a problem with that. I find a lot of things can go wrong with them, so I don't typically use them. Plus I enjoy working with my hands, but on the disassembly side, I guess there's not too much that can go wrong with pulling a screw out. On the assembly side, you got to watch the torque on those things, make sure that it doesn't over torque and split a side plate, or put unnecessary tension or that on the gears inside. Okay, so side plate, 3 screws come off, they go into the part bucket. We remove the side plate, and this reel is in excellent condition for the 4 or 5 years. So next off is a bearing. This is a 3 bearing reel. It has 1 on each side and 1 up under the shaft. I'm going to just take a quick look at that. This is a little bit different in terms of the gear that drives the spool. We'll just spin it to show you how it moves it up and down. It sits on a little pin that sits into the transition piece, and that little collar is held in by a small thin washer. So remember that you're going to put this on, and then you're going to put those 2 little washers on before you put that bearing on. Okay, with that off, then you can pull this off. Slip that right out and back into the parts bucket. And then usually you have to take the spool off in order to pull the main gear because of the drive on the back side of this, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So the cross wind block is holds the spool assembly in with a Phillips head screw. I'm going to go ahead and take that out, and then we can pull that whole spool assembly off. You do not need to take the spool off in order to take the spool shaft off. And then we can remove the main gear. The secondary bearing fell out of that, so we're going to go put that back in there. And so here's where the quick work is done on this. You want to check. This needs some lubrication. It's been a while since it's been worked. You want to clean off any surplus grease, because that grease does trap contaminants over time. We'll want to restore that grease, and we're going to use a blue grease. In this case, I use a Penn Mules grease. Daiwa makes one as well as aftermarket products that are out there that do the same. And we're just going to go put a good amount of grease on there. There's no reason to put grease in the center. And those of you that are playing along here, you notice that there's a ridge here. That's why you have to pull a spool shaft out before you can pull this out, because the spool shaft can't get past that ridge, or the main gear can't get past that ridge with the spool in place. Okay, there's a little bit of accumulated grease here, not much, but we'll go take that off with the Q-tip, and then we're going to just put a little bit of grease on that main gear, and then we're going to just put a little bit more grease on the slot where the spool carrier rides up and down. Okay, so this was the spool carrier that came out. There's a little bit of buildup on that. Might as well take that out at this point. I use a paper towel just to wipe that off, and we're going to go put that back in place. That point, remember, is what the crosswind transition piece sits on, so that points out. We've lubed that. We're going to put a little bit of lube on the face of this because of the way that spool mechanism works. It's going to want to ride in a groove there, and you want it to slip. And then we're going to oil the bearings. So the bearing is it's a shielded side on this, but it's an open side on the back. That shielded side goes out towards the water. Internally it sits in with the main gear. So we're going to push that back into the slot. We're going to put just a little bit of blue grease on the ferrule for the main gear. So this reel is, I guess the term probably gets overused, but it's bulletproof. There's so much durability and rigidity in this reel that it can last ages, right? The technology on reels really has not changed that much. This one shouldn't wear out. The reel will always do what you bought it to do. It's sort of like a PC, right? It'll always do what you bought it to do. It's just that they may add features and functions to reels as they come up. This one, for example, has the hard and wider case. You'll find places where they've moved them over to graphite. They've made a fashion statement. They've changed colors, and even the new BG series now, it's a little bit different there. Okay, and then same thing. We got a shielded bearing that goes to the outside, and the ball open side. We're going to go use the reel oil for that. I oil bearings, and I lube the moving parts. I use a Real X oil for the oiling, and we're ready here now. So that little light washer there covers that bearing side, and then the shielded side is to the water side there. Before I go and put the spool assembly back on, I'm going to pull this off because there is some maintenance required under there. And one of the things I suggested in the video I did on how to set up before you do work is to have a whole bunch of different wrenches, because every manufacturer is a little bit different in terms of the nuts that they use to do the things. But interestingly enough, is technologically inside these reels, they're all pretty much the same. Okay, so inside here what we're going to see is we've got a little anti-reverse click kind of a mechanism there. We've got the reverse dog, so this is not an anti-reverse reel. And then what we've got underneath that is the spool bearing. So if we pull this up, you want to remember that there's a flying spring on this one that sits on this anti-reverse that's got to sit inside that loop that's been created. And I'm going to pull this up. I'm not going to take this whole assembly out for the sake of time, but I just wanted to get that up enough so that I could put the oil on that top side spool bearing. And I'm going to bring this back down, and then again there's a seating here. That little spring has got to go inside the anti-reverse dog, and that's so that as you're spooling you see it's moving, and that's what's moving that anti-reverse dog. And then one more drop of oil on the anti-reverse dog itself, and we're going to button this back up. Check underneath, make sure it's clean. It is clean, and we're going to just go back and put the nut back on, and we'll be done with that. So I did a video a little bit earlier comparing this to the pen Spin Fisher series, and you can't go wrong with either reel. They're both built to last a lifetime, and so long as you take care of them and do maintenance like this, you'll just won't have that reel fail. So I recommend doing it before the season starts, and then of course if there's any trouble along the way, go ahead and make the repair. Alright, so we're going to reinsert the spool shaft. We're going to line that up so that it can sit on the spool assembly transition piece. We're going to go put that Phillips head screw back in there. Those of you that watch my videos know that my voice is hoarse today, but all the time I have trouble with small parts, so just bear with me, and we'll get this one done. Okay, so we're going to go put that back into the crosswind block. Then we're going to go put the bottom on, and then we'll show you how to do the drags up top on this reel. This one was clean. If you need it to clean, I suggest using, if it's caked on grease, I suggest using WD-40 to help melt away some of that stuff, and then use your Q-tips and your paper towels. If you've got some corrosion on the body or that, or some deep pitting green kind of stuff, I suggest using a metal polish like a Turtle Wax chrome cleaner. It's an automotive product. And use some 4-0 steel wool. That'll be a little bit more abrasive. You can also use a scouring pad, the green pads that you find for kitchen use. They work well in terms of cleaning up a reel. And I also use a product, Purple Power. It's available online or through Walmart or through auto dealers, O'Reilly's, or any of the auto stores, and you can get that. It's a general concentrated degreaser. I'll just show that to you quickly, and I found none better for taking things like fish scales and just general buildup off of reels. Okay, so we're going to go put the handle back on this. That bottom is done. We'll just take a quick ride, and it rides nice and smooth, and then we'll just go up top now and service those drags. So I like this reel a lot. I don't go for all the fancy stuff. I think a reel that costs about $100, which is US, which is what this is plenty. I think that if you can get into the $200-300 reels, those are fine, right? But I'm not sure that they're needed, and they're generally not a lot of function. A couple more ball bearings, a little bit more on the engineering side, and the like. But from pure usage standpoint, the 3 ball bearings is plenty. Okay, this is traditional of a not only a Daiwa reel, but most spinning reels. You'll have a cavity up top that holds the drags. In that cavity, it's held in by a spring clamp, and you can get access to that spring clamp usually by little notches or the like there. And I use a pin. You could use a screwdriver or other things. One of the things you want to do when you take that spring out is hold your finger on that, because these things have a tendency to fly. It is a spring, and then once you work that up, you'll see that it comes out, and right back into the parts bucket so that I know where to go with it. Alright, and then I just pull the drags out here. One of the good things that you should do when you do the drags, if you're not familiar with these things, take pictures along the way. Take your cell phone, take your camera, do a picture, just to get an idea of that. Again, I apologize for having a little bit of a cold here. Alright, I take a Q-tip just to clean the grime in there. It's probably some seawater and things that I've gotten in there. These are Teflon drags. You don't do anything with Teflon drags. They're sort of self-lubricating. They're very common in Daiwa reels. Other reels will have Carbonex type washers and the like. Those you want to put drag grease on, like a cow's drag grease. Some of them will have felt, like the Penn Fierce has an oil felt drag system. You want to oil those, not grease those. But in this case, the Teflon, you just want to make sure they're clean. Okay, so they came out in this order. They came out in a Teflon drag, the metal, that is a D-shaped washer. the Teflon drag. The middle is always the eared washer. It has the points on both sides and it rides in the corresponding groove here. So you want to make sure that's seated properly, like that. Last of the Teflon drags there. This one has a little bit more of the seawater contamination stuff on it, so just clean that off. Again, this is a general servicing for the reel, so why not take your time and do that. If you know what you're doing, what's the length of this video going to be? 15 minutes. So in 15 minutes you can set your reel up for the whole season. Alright, once you do that, you reinstall that spring clip. You'll see that there is a groove that's cut into the spool, and again, this is pretty much standard kind of procedure across any particular spinning reel. And once you set that up, you realign that spool, and you just kind of do it by twisting until you can see it come all the way through. You put your drag knob back on and you're good for another season, and it'll last you it'll treat you well, it'll operate smoothly, and you've just made sure that you've got any of the contaminants that may have been there from the season of fishing out of the way, so that you can go and have another good year with a great reel. So again, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd ask you to like it. If you'd like to see more of these, I'm constantly working on reels like this. And subscribe to my channel, and you'll see them as I get them into my shop. Thanks again for watching.